Hey everybody, welcome to episode 135 of the Titanforge podcast. Dratnos joined by Tettles as always. Trell is out this week, and our special guest this week is Hippo.
Hello.
Hello. So, Hippo, we have you on. Ooh, we actually have another feral druid joining as well on Tettles' camera. But we have you on this week, feral druid extraordinaire. What's your, I guess, a little bit of the story? Obviously, I spoiled the feral druid bit, but what guild are you raiding with now? What guilds are you raided with in the past?
So I'm currently raiding with Might, with my good friend Tettles here. But I used to raid in Pieces and BDG, in Sanctum and Castle Nather respectively, but I just didn't want to go as hardcore. I just wanted to chill, play the spec I enjoy, just Feral Druid, obviously. But yeah, I guess that's just all there is to it.
And again, not to spoil it a little bit, but you've played basically everything, like as long as I've known you. I know some tiers you played like a Death Knight whenever that was Fodom.
Yeah, I've played a bunch of random Fodom stuff and like the super high-end guilds like DK, DH. I played Moonkin mostly in BDG and Pieces, but I played a lot of Ellie Shaman in Pieces as well. But
you played TGP as an Ellie Shaman.
I also did the Great Push when I was on Europe with Pieces with like Andy Brew and Wildy. I played Guardian Druid in that, Balanced Druid, Ellie Shaman, so play a couple things, I guess. Every Druid spec plus a little Fodom pretty much is what I am known for.
But then this tier you got to play as Feral Druid the whole way through, in for every boss.
Yep. I was sat for Anduin. Okay, so originally I was in for Anduin, and then like 7 pulls went by, and we went on break, and I came back and I was sat. And I was like, what's going on? And they were like, oh yeah, we forgot you need 2 Mass Dispels. And I was like, okay, well, I don't have Mass Dispel. So they just sat me. Nothing can be done.
Well, we did. Okay, so we really didn't want to run a Shadow Priest. I think.
Yeah, we had to run a Shadow Priest instead of, because we didn't have 2 Holy Priests, and I was punished. But I don't think. Yeah, I digress. It happened. I did play Feral and everything else, and it's good this year. It's good.
Yeah, so that's a lot of what we'll talk about today is going to be playing something non-meta, playing something like a Feral Druid in raids at fairly high, like Hall of Fame, not quite on the leaderboard, but, Hall of Fame like in the same week.
Hall of Shame.
Yeah, Hall of Shame.
They call it Hall of Shame.
Level.
I'm pretty sure our world rank might be the same episode number of the podcast. I think it might be.
135?
I think it might be 135.
Oh my god, I'm gonna check now.
I want to check. I know.
Yeah. I will. Let's take a look.
It is certainly close.
Yeah. Okay. It's very close. Yeah.
Let's see. On Radar.io, or let's see here, 103.
Like our actual world rank.
Yeah, like world rank.
Not the WoW Prog world rank.
Not the WoW Prog one.
WoW Prog has is like 95 or something like that. They just don't show that many Chinese guilds.
Yeah,
where is it?
We were
maybe like
131.
131?
Or it might be 132. It says 132.
Oh, 131. Oh my god.
Yeah,
that was so
we were
close.
close. We almost got there. Yeah, it was a very close Hall of Fame. We had some ups and downs this year. Jailer owned us a little bit, but we got it.
We played okay on Halandris and Anduin, and then got.
Dude, it was really unfortunate. We went 88 Raglan to 132. I've never actually looked at this. This is kind of sad, but it happens.
Oh, like the trend over the tier. Yeah, I was looking at this earlier today actually. But yeah, here's the 104 Halandris, 97 Anduin, 98 Lords, 88 Raglan, 132 Jailer. Very sad.
Yeah, we still got it, man. Hall of Shame. No one's gonna know the difference in like a year. It'll be fine.
Yeah, exactly. Nobody goes and looks at the leaderboard page. They just look at the title, which
you've
got.
We got the title. We got the title.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Got the title.
All right. Well, so yeah, that's what we'll talk about today. The couple of public service announcements to get out of the way first, though. One is there's some weird bugs with 925. I'm sure people have seen a bunch of stuff about like the cross-faction groups and a bunch of things not working. But one important thing is don't faction transfer once you are locked to a mythic raid, or something will brick about it. So you won't be able to go back in.
I think it just
resets your lockout or something, because something weird. You're not able to raid with your guild pretty much, so don't do it.
Yeah, transfer at the end of the reset, or ideally maybe even after you open your Great Vaults, because that might get bricked as well by transferring. Not 100% sure, but Yeah, maybe do that next Tuesday or Wednesday instead. Other thing as well, we have a event going on in our Discord this weekend, actually several weekends, but it's called Mimosas and M Plus. If anybody's interested in joining, it's on June 4th at 11 Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Europe, 3 a.m. in Australia, but that's on June 5th. So if anybody's interested, just it's a bunch of people doing 15s. Should be pretty fun. Join our Discord. There'll be links in the description below if you aren't already in that and you're listening on or watching anywhere. Anyways, without further ado, let's get into the definition of, or the main part of our show. And I want to start with the definition of what a non-meta spec is. And I'd like to hear Tettles' argument now for why Balance Druid is actually a non-meta spec using the Warcraft logs statistics data.
I don't think that Balance Druid's a non-meta spec. In fact, I think that Balance Druid is so meta that it didn't get buffed because of it. But
okay, yeah. So basically, it's we could take a look at the number of parses on Mythic, and then we're not actually looking so much at the amount of damage, but the total number of parses, right? So 3,500 Balance Druid parses, 518 Feral ones, 141 Athlock ones, right? So these specs down here at the bottom are the ones we're talking about, right? Feral Assassination.
It's way worse if you select 9.2 because they partitioned this patch.
Oh yeah, okay, let's see that.
Balance at 31,000 and Feral at 2,400. So
yeah,
it's a little worse. Balance the most played spec by a couple thousand.
I mean, Balance has been the most played spec for a while.
Yeah.
It was the most played spec in BOD, and then I remember it fell off to like Mage and stuff like that because it wasn't like that great. The final 2 patches of BFA, but it's always been like one of the most popular specs by a decent bit.
Yeah, and to be clear, the popularity contest side of things is not always the, like, monk specs, for instance, have always been underplayed relative to how good they are. Yeah. So there's a lot of effects that confound this, but it's, as a first level approximation, it does kind of give you an idea of like, okay, who is actually playing what, and clearly, yeah, Feral, Arcane, Affliction, Outlaw would all qualify as like off-meta specs. And Affliction, I bet of these 1,300, almost all of these are on Pantheon, right? And that spec would be even more off-meta to try and use on any other fight.
Yeah, so I think just in general, though, meta is defined by like so there's like a potential that the class can provide. So like if the spec has like a very high potential, but it's underplayed, it can still be meta. There are seasons that Windwalker Monk will be like super strong, but it just doesn't have a lot of people playing it. That kind of thing where like it can still be meta, especially at the high end, because the world because you're not going to have a lot of people. Just a lot of people don't play Windwalker Monk. Specifically, a lot of people don't play Windwalker Monk. So even like last season, you wouldn't see that many parses of it. You wouldn't even see that many people playing it. But then you'd look at the high end groups, and they would all be playing a Windwalker Monk because it's that good. But if you're doing like a weekly 15, you're not going to get that many Windwalkers applying to your group. That kind of thing. So there are specs that can be meta, just based off potential or just based off like raw throughput that you don't even see that often. And I think like Serve Hunter would be a decent example if a ton of people weren't actually like re-rolling to it right now.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that Survival Hunter a lot of people are re-rolling to it because I feel like a lot of people aren't re-rolling to Warlock. I think there's just a lot of Warlocks in general, but I never see like Warlock ults. It's always just like you sign up your key in Group Finder. There's like 14 Survival Hunters that sign up.
Yeah, I've seen a few Warlock alts, but definitely the survival craze. I think it's a spec that a lot of people have been waiting for it to be good.
Yeah, it's very unique.
Yeah. So, okay, looking at this graph, so I guess the first question I have is, Hippo, how would you describe Feral Druid's like strengths and weaknesses? Is it a case of, the spec is unpopular because it's hard, or is it unpopular because it's actually bad, or is it unpopular because it's got some weaknesses but it's got these strengths that make up for it? Or like if somebody was asking you like, hey, I'm maybe thinking about playing Feral in Raid, like, should I? How would you kind of respond to that?
I think Feral Druid has this like weird community perception that it's like the most difficult spec in the game, when it maybe like 4 expansions ago when like snapshotting was like super important, but like right now the spec is so streamlined with how it plays. Like I don't think it's a difficulty curve thing. I just think if someone's playing a DPS Druid they're just gonna play balance because it's typically way better. Right now, you could probably argue that Feral is a little better than balance and raid, just because I think Feral Druid might be the best single target in the game without externals like involved. I know like Demo Warlocks probably beat them by a decent amount with externals, but I think just
I'll
base
Kyrian
class.
link you. I'll Kyrian link you, and we can beat.
Yeah.
First off,
Well,
you can
I
beat
mean,
Yo
last
Mama
patch-
DR.
Last patch when I begged my guild for externals on Skolex, I think I had like rank 3 or something like overall. So like Feral Druid can do the most single target damage in the game, I think, out of any class right now. But the obvious downside is that you do not have AoE. Like your AoE is it's very weird because if it lives for like 10 seconds, which is like the duration, the AoE comes from the 4 set, by the way, if you didn't know. It's you press Berserk, and pretty much all around you just apply a bleed. It does like a bunch of damage. But if it dies in like 10 seconds, it's actually pretty good. Like it does good snap AoE, but it's just like consistently snap AoE, you're just going to get destroyed with like a Windwalker, obviously. But I don't think it's bad at like things like Zymox, like the Mythic Zymox fight, like platforms. Like that would be somewhere where a Feral Druid AoE is actually like good. But in general, the AoE of Pharaoh is like extremely lackluster. But this raid there like is an AoE, so you're just hitting bosses. Mm-hmm. And like I think the only fight that like Pharaoh is just like noticeably terrible on is like Anduin. But there's like a bunch of weird stuff you can do. You can like play Kyrian and just like link some OP class and spam swipe and try to be useful. But you're probably not going to be that useful in that fight because if you try to play Convoke, there's like 700 little mobs. You're going to start biting like random stuff, thrashing 4 times in a Convoke. It's not good. So that's another weakness. If there's a lot of targets, Convoke kind of sucks. But I don't know. I think it's really good this tier specifically. And I think the aura buffs, they did like a little AoE buff patch, and it also had like a 4% aura buff, which was super unnecessary because aura buffs are usually a fixed single target, and Feral Druid was already a really good single target. I think we were on like Halandris when it happened. I was like significantly top damage by the time like where we were in Prague because like I had just pressed my second cooldowns. Mm-hmm. I looked really good at the game. I was padding the meters on a single target boss. It was epic. And then I got buffed, and then I was like trying to convince my guild to give me PI because I was already beating the Demo Warlock with PI, so I should get the PI, right? Like it just makes sense. I never got it, but
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you blame Psy for not having AoE this tier?
I don't know, dude. Like, does Blizzard really nerf off Twitch clips? Maybe. I know they nerf off Warcraft logs, but like it wasn't like a Warcraft log. I don't know. It's so weird. I don't even like. It was bizarre that they did that, and I never really cared as much as a lot of people did. Like I was mad about it, but I was like, okay, well, I still do good single target at least. I got that going for me. Some tiers I don't even have that, so you gotta pick your battles when you play the dumb cat spec.
He says he doesn't care, but he threatened to quit the game if they didn't rebuff his spec.
Dude, listen, I don't know. It's weird. Feral Druid's in every single patch. It's like a dice roll if this spec's going to be playable or not. And that's why I usually have like a Fodom alt, but this patch specifically, I didn't have an alt going into it, so it was like, all right, well, if this cat spec isn't good, man, I am doomed. But it was good, so it was safe. Yeah. But yeah, there's a couple fights that Feral's like particularly good at, and it happens to be the last 3 fights in the raid, plus like Halandris. Like Lord's Dread, Feral Druid's actually like one of the better specs. It's just no one plays it. So like you would never know. I know it's better than Moonkin, but that's not saying much on that fight specifically. Rygalon, it's like extremely good, and also like Feral Druid has the benefit of being like absurdly tanky compared to most melee classes, and also having +3 range. So like I think Feral Druid's a really good prog spec because you're super tanky, you do consistent single target damage, which is hard to come by these days for some reason. Everything's RNG. And +3 range on a melee is like the biggest utility in the world. I like when you play Outlaw or Feral Druid, like you notice it so significantly when you go back to another melee. And it's definitely a really nice utility to have. And specifically on Jailer, it's just a single target fight with like a random burst AoE that you're allowed to actually be useful at. So Feral Druid's just really good at it.
It's very interesting because I think that Feral Druid, and like this raid in particular, like bringing Feral Druid is like less bad than it would otherwise be in other raids, because other raids you would stack a couple of different classes, but Sepulchre in particular, you're looking for different damage profiles, and so
Yeah.
Feral can slot into the same spot that like Demo Lock, Sub Rogue, those kind of things would slot into, and like Enhancement Shaman, even like you can just play like a Feral in those same spots that you would see other guilds playing, like the Enhancement Shaman, the Demo Lock, and like they're able to pump single target damage and do mostly the same kind of stuff. And I think that it's kind of interesting to see how the raids have evolved to where you can bring a lot of these non-meta specs, but you have to make sure that they're slotting into appropriate parts of fights, or they're replacing like a one-to-one replacement with like what they would be doing.
Yeah, I think this expansion at least, it like started with Enhanced Shaman, because it was like, oh, you bring Wind Fury, which is like technically 2k DPS for like the 3 warriors you have in the Sanctum of Domination, but you also do like upper middle pack single target, so technically you're the best DPS in the game, but like it's not like that, but you are. And then like Feral Druid this patch is just like, okay, well, you just do stupid single target and you live, so it's just like good, you slot it at a single target boss fight, it'll be good. But yeah, I know specifically for Jailer, the 4 set, which like I was talking about it earlier, the 4 set you activated does AoE damage. On the MCs, particularly, I had to stop pressing Berserk because after people got un-MC'd, I would just kill them. It was really bizarre to me. Like no other class was like able to kill after the MCs, so they would get un-MC'd, and then the Sickle of the Lion Dot would just hit them for like 15k twice, and they die.
Yeah, because you couldn't even MD it or whatever. It's a bleed, right? Yeah,
it's a bleed, and I literally got banned from pressing it on MCs. So I was literally just hitting Jailer. I just wasn't even allowed to do AoE because my specs one AoE niche happened to kill the raid. It was super bizarre. So that was a pretty quirky thing from Jailer specifically.
I know, like some Havoc Demon Hunters would meta outside of the stack so that they wouldn't sinful brand the people.
Sinful brand the raid. Yeah,
it's a pretty wild bit. I wish getting un-MC'd just cleared your debuffs, man. It's so it's so toxic. Yeah,
I love when like someone just has a conduit, like they're MC'd, they're playing like Nia, or not Nia, it's Naja Mistblade. It just roots the whole raid because they got MC'd. It's like, okay, man, this is wonderful.
Yeah, or Braun would show up.
Oh, dude, we had so many problems with Braun. No other guild struggled as much as we did with Braun. I don't know what it was, but our bronze would spawn perfectly to ruin the raid every single time on Jailer MCs. It was like almost comedic sometimes how good it was and how frequent it happened to us.
Oh god.
Yeah, I was trying to convince my, Kyrian friends to cancel Aura that thing, but they just won't do it. It's 0.5% damage. Can't lose that.
We eventually banned it, but then like people wouldn't do it, and then it just got awkward, and everyone was like, I'm gonna do it anyways, and some people were just like, I don't care about the damage, I just want to be free. But who knows.
Okay, so going back to like, I think a thing that you kind of mentioned a little bit at the start there is like a lot of DPS druids. When we were back looking at the kind of big meta numbers, it's like I feel like a lot of people who play DPS druids in guilds end up sort of being pipelined to Moonkin on various encounters over the years, right? It's like, oh, well, we've got this Moonkin work that we need to do on this fight, right? Like somebody has to do the Bloods on the Jailer, somebody has to do the ramp on the intermission ads in Anduin, somebody has to do the beam here, somebody has to go and do like one of these 30 different annoying Moonkin jobs that Moonkins will complain about. But we're gonna make, like, if we've got somebody in our raid that it can play either Feral or Moonkin, we're gonna push them towards Moonkin on like a lot of fights for that kind of thing. Has that been something that you've kind of experienced or seen happening with the DPS druids in particular?
I know in Castle Nathria and Sanctum specifically, when Moonkin was like super fodum, it was just like insanely good both tiers. I definitely saw that a lot. I mean, I was playing Balance. I would have rather played Feral, but I didn't really care about what spec I played. I just wanted to raid super
This is back
hard.
when you were in Race World First Guilds,
Yeah. So, like, I didn't care about what spec I played, but I'm sure, like, if there was a fight that... Because, like, obviously I know how to play both the specs, but if there was a fight, like, I'm trying to think of something, an example, like, just like Sylvanas, like, you only had one Vintier Moonkin and you had, like, a Night Fae Feral Druid just hitting the boss. It was like, that guy 9 times out of 10 would be more useful killing the intermission arrows and then doing 0 damage for the rest of the fight, which is just like the unfortunate curse of Moonkin being broken. But this tier was like weird because Moonkin wasn't like super broken. It was just like really good. You just like still threw Moonkins at like certain mechanics, and it was just like, okay, you deal with this. Everyone else has their own little mini game, but you get to root the ad on the Hoovum. You get to like ramp on the Mantra Soul. You get the Cyclone stuff, and it's just like you can do a lot of that stuff as Feral, but it's just like not fun to do it. And I like if I had to root an ad on the Hoovum, I would have just like played balance, so I wouldn't have to run out of the raid, root the mob, and then run back.
So I actually have a question. Do you think that it's like important to be able to be a little bit more flexible if you're playing something that's not normally deemed as like meta, whether it be able to play balance or have just like a complete separate alt geared up? Like, is that something that is important?
I think it depends on like what type of player you are. Obviously, if you only enjoy playing your niche little spec that isn't very good, you can just play that and it will probably be fine 9 times out of 10. But if like you care about your guild prog or you like care about individual performance, you should probably have like an alt that can do a job that your main can't. I think that just goes for everyone if they like care about their guild prog, but specifically if you're playing like a feral druid, like right now, like I'm alting like I had a DK this tier if it like got bad, but it never did. And I've always like any tier that I played feral, it's just like I always just had an alt that was good in case like doomsday scenario happened, because like at the end of the day, I don't really care what I'm playing as long as I'm raiding. I just want to raid, even if it is a little less fun because I'm playing some stupid Fodum spec instead of Feral Druid. But I don't know. It just really depends on what your values are, I guess. Like this tier specifically, I got sat on a couple fights because I was Feral Druid, and I was like, at first I cared, and then I realized, okay, well, if I was in for this fight, it just wouldn't make sense because Feral's not good at it. Like if I was in for Anduin, I would just be doing literally nothing. I would be trolling the raid pretty much because it's just like such an anti-feral fight in like every aspect. And like say your guild only has 20 players, they have to slot this feral druid that can't do much on that boss. It just feels bad. So like if you have a Fodum ult, I don't know. I think it's just better for your guild, but obviously if you only care about that spec, then you only care about that spec. And no one's gonna care, I imagine.
There's definitely levels to this, right? Whereas like Race to World First guilds, they're gonna want you to play basically full meta on every single thing. They don't care. And then like Hall of Fame guilds, you definitely get a little bit more leeway where there's a couple of slots like 18th, 19th, 20th DPS slot. You can kind of slot in a couple of different like niche or non-meta things. And then cutting edge guilds, there's a lot more leeway where there may be like 5 or 6 slots for people who overperform their class limitations, I guess is how I would describe it.
Yeah, because it's definitely true that like if you're trying to get a raid spot in any guild, you're going to have an easier time. For any given guild and any given player skill, you're going to have an easier time finding a spot by playing something on meta, right? Like if I'm trying to climb the guild ladder, right? You know, and I'm trying to do it as a feral druid, I'd have to be playing I'd have to be getting rank 1 parses type stuff to be getting into guilds, right? Which obviously is exactly what you're doing.
An exceptional player at the spec compared to like an average player at a Fodum spec, and you'd probably be doing like on par damage, and then it would be fine. But like you also have to be playing out of your mind to consistently like be playing at a rank 1 performance against these like Fodum classes that are probably way more fit to do the fight than your dumb little cat spec that can't do AoE. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's a good thing to just like have an ult. Like it doesn't even have to be a good one. Like well, that's a bad example because Windwalker just got buffed and is now the best spec in the game for some reason. But
true.
Like something I always like did was like I had a feral druid and it did single target, so I would try to have an ult that did like an AoE niche. So like if there was a fight like Anduin that like the single target stuff doesn't really matter, you just need to get through these like tough AoE portions. It's like, all right, I have this Frosty K, I have this Windwalker I can play for like fights that feral druid isn't good at, and it like they're specs that I still enjoy like to a degree, like not as much as feral druid, but like they're enjoyable, and it just like is better for like guild morale, I guess, to have like better specs for the fight. Like no matter like it's really hard to argue to bring a feral druid. Like I keep saying Anduin, but like Anduin is such a bad fight for feral druid. It's not even funny.
But I have a question. An interesting point in chat. It says the the point is the meta is so consistently the same. Do you actually think that the meta that we see for Raid in particular, actually, I know for Mythic Plus this is definitely true, but do you think that the meta for Raid is pretty stagnant with what we see, at least DPS wise?
I think so, yeah, because it's just like raid buffs, like no matter what. It's really weird because raid buffs usually end up being the best specs anyways somehow. Like you need a warlock, you need at least one warlock no matter what. Hellstone's gateways, summons. Need a mage for just intellect, need a demonizer obviously, but in general there's like specs that are always good and specs that like kind of teeter on the edge of being good and just like borderline unplayable. And I think Feral Druid's one of those. I don't think Feral Druid has been unplayable in a long time. I think the last tier that comes to mind is Old Deer. I think every other tier since Old Deer, and like before that, I can't even remember a tier that Feral Druid was like bad. And I've been playing since like Kata. But I think it's really rare that a spec is completely unplayable. And like people that tell you it's unplayable just like are wrong 90% of the time because they're just like playing Fodom, re-rolling Fodom. They just don't want to play with the non-Fodom spec because it makes content more difficult. And like difficult in quotation marks. Like you might get this patch you might get a Destro Warlock that doesn't even know like how to play the spec, but he's the best spec in the game, so he gets invited to everything. Whereas you have like this Feral Druid player who's like really consistent, really good, never dies, but he's not getting invited to like 26s because like I don't know who wants to take a Feral Druid when you could have the chance to have a Destro Warlock doing 40k overall on your key. Just like stuff like that. I don't know. It's definitely a fine line. I think this patch in particular is a really bad example because Destro Warlock and like Survival Hunter are like significantly better than everything else.
Yeah.
So usually it's not that bad. Like season 1 was. There were some outliers like Moonkin, Subrogue, Fire Mage, but they weren't like 20% better. So it really just
Ellie
depends.
and DOS.
Yeah,
you
like
didn't even get to
you
play
could.
Moonkin and DOS.
Yeah, you do get to play Ellie Shaman instead of Moonkin and DOS. Good times. Yeah, I don't know. It's always just like it all goes back to raid buffs, man. Give Feral Druid a raid buff or something. Who cares?
So what's your experience with like LFG then for like Mythic Plus? Is it like unplayable as a non-meta spec, you think?
I think it's a little different for me because I don't like pug unless I absolutely have to. And I just have like a friends list of people that know like, okay, even if he's playing a Feral Druid, he's not going to int the key. Potentially, maybe. You never know. But like I see a lot of people in like just like class discords or just like on Twitter just like, man, I literally can't get into a 15 because I'm playing a bad spec and it feels terrible and I'm quitting the game. And I'm like, yeah, that's probably right. I don't think I've ever. There's always the meme like you get invited to a key because you're a DPS druid, and you start the key like in Moonkin form, but you're a Feral Druid, and then as the key is starting, you can go into cat form. You literally hide, and I've seen a lot of people say that works for them because apparently this has never happened to me.
I've never seen this.
This has never happened to me, but people talk about it all the time. They say that they get invited to a key, and they're like, "Oh, you're feral," and then they get kicked because they thought they were balanced. I don't know. Maybe I'm lucky. I can't remember that ever happening to me. It probably has once or twice, but my memory's awful. And so people have literally started like joining groups as balance, and as the countdown for the key is starting, they spec feral, and like stuff like that's pretty bad. That's just like community perception. But I don't know. LFG in general is kind of just bad, and you should try to make friends to do keys with as soon as possible. But it's fun to pug sometimes. You get some wacky experiences in keys.
All right, I have a question. So there are some specs that you can see like big streamers playing all the time, right? The ones that are in like the MDI, the ones that are in the plus 30 push groups, right? And so you can kind of like learn like, oh, this is what the Warlock does here, right? Like, oh, the Warlock banishes this ad, and everybody sort of kind of learns that, right? And so you're used to like playing with Warlocks, and okay, they're gonna banish this ad, right? And then they're gonna gateway here or something like that. But when you're playing as a Feral Druid, you kind of have this double problem of you don't have big streamers like there's obviously one or two feral streamers, right? But you don't have like a bunch of a community library of like the feral stuff that they do, right? So you kind of have to like find that, and then also how much you have to like explain to your group, like, oh, here's what Feral Druid is doing here, so that you can play around it.
Yeah, something that comes to mind for something like that is like the first boss of Mist. Feral Druid is like exceptionally good at it because the legendary scales with damage bonuses like a ridiculous amount. And it's always just like, hey guys, just kill the tree for me. I will like double your damage on like the damage amp phase. Just make it so I don't have to do damage to the tree, and it will like go way smoother. But like you're in a pug group like a +20, and like no one's popping damage on the tree. When if they knew how Feral Druid worked, it would like just work way easier. There's definitely stuff like that.
Yes,
Stuff
that's like
CC.
you got to find that out. Like, so
Yeah.
you have to find that out yourself, and you have to communicate it to the group as well, right?
Yeah. I think in general, there's like not a lot of Feral Druid players, but the ones that actively play it are like generally very helpful. Like the Feral Druid class Discord Dreamgrove is actually like very useful. It's also very stupid at times, but most of the time it's very useful.
That's because it's also
like,
the Moonkin Discord, yeah.
Yeah. It's mostly like a lot of people like generally trying to help because there's only like 30 people playing the spec at like a high end, and it's like, okay, well, these people will help you answer your questions, whatever it may be, and it's like a weird sense of community. Like I mean, obviously, like stuff like Moonkin has that, but it's definitely like more broad, and it's just like a neat little community of like Feral Druids. Like there's a lot of people think it's cringe. So Necrolord Feral Druid is like kind of okay in keys, but it's like discovery tech that like no one knows about because only like 3 people play it, and like a group of like 7 people came together and made like a 6,000 text word document about Necrolord Pharaoh and its like strength and keys and like stuff like that. I don't think other classes like ever do that. Like you don't see like the Necrolord Moonkin compendium going on anytime soon.
We don't need that because it's bad.
Yeah, I mean, you don't need that because it's bad, but it's a bad example. But like, just stuff like that, it's very cool to like see happen because this like it wasn't like a en masse scale of like a bunch of players making this guide. It was like actually like 5 people, and they're like they want people to play this because it's like interesting, it's new, it's fun, it has like niches that like Feral Druid is like. The niche for Necrolord Pharaoh is that it can actually do AoE. It can't do boss damage, but it can do like consistent AoE with like a haste stacking like Necrolord ability that makes it bleeds tick faster, and like the force set, it just like amps the force set pretty much. It's like stuff like that. I don't know how other like off meta specs function with stuff like that. Like I don't know. I don't want to call Outlaw off meta, but usually it is not very played, depending on. But like all rogue specs are weird. I don't know. I actually can't think of another class. Like maybe Survival Hunter before this patch had like a niche little community that like people just talked about stuff and it was like useful. But yeah, the like no streamer thing, like that's pretty true. You're not going to find
Warlock doesn't even have it, and that is a heavily played spec. Like
I literally just think it's just like the people that play the class. Like people that play Warlock are generally just like playing Fodom. They just start playing it because it's good. They don't actually like. I don't want to say they don't care.
But they're like dead inside,
Yeah, they're just playing Warlock, man. Like
right.
they don't care about stuff. They just press rate of fire. But like Feral Druid, you have a bunch of these like dedicated people. It's like if I'm not playing Feral Druid, I'm not playing the game. Period. And it's like, okay, well, you have
they
fun.
Hit you with a cat face.
Yeah, they just like start meowing at you in game, and I don't know. It's definitely interesting about one of the big problems or one of the big benefits, I guess, of Feral Druid is that any weird utility stuff that Balance Druid can do, you can just copy it as Feral 90% of the time, unless it's like Solar Beam. Because you play a Boomkin Affinity, which gives you access to like Moonkin Form Flap, for like example. In Mists, when like you pulled over the wall after the first boss with like Flap if you didn't have a pet class in your group. Like Feral Druid can do that. It has roots, it has instant roots, which are kind of useful. It can take mass roots, like it can do everything Moonkin can do, but in melee pretty much.
Except for trees and beam and
Innervate
and being ranged.
Innervate, dude, Innervate should have been a Feral utility like 7 years ago. Well, it was, and then it got removed, I guess.
Like years ago. You used to have Stampeding Roar as well, but then they gave that to Moonkin too. Yeah.
So. The Stampeding Roar thing is like very heinous, and they should never have done that. That was very rude. Like they gave Roar to Moonkin and then didn't give Feral Druid Innervate.
They also give us Clone and Heart of the Wild.
Yeah, I don't know. There's definitely some like utility favoritism going on, but like knowing Blizzard, they would give Feral Druid Innervate, but it wouldn't be castable in cat form, so you'd have to waste 3 globals to cast Innervate. Like, dude, no healer is important enough to me to waste 3 globals to cast Innervate for. I'm sorry, man. Like, it's not happening. But if it was like instant in cat form, it'd be good. But I don't know. That is.
How does this work for like things like DPS Death Knights and Ret Paladins and stuff like that? That like.
That's a great question. I have no idea.
What do you mean,
honestly.
like just discovery of utility, or
Like discovery
compendiums and stuff?
Like that.
Yeah,
because like at least Moonkin is meta, so like there's always going to be some like
yeah.
If like Moonkin being so popular, you're going to like see Moonkins and you kind of know how to play around them. But then like if you have like a Ret Paladin in your group, like do you have to just test how Bop works on every single interaction of? Okay, so Holy Paladin was meta all expansions. So you can figure it out, but like
I don't know. I think that's a very good question. I don't know how other classes do it and like find stuff. I'm trying to think of a class that would have like unique utility that isn't brought very often. The only thing I can think of is like maybe Ellie Shaman with like Earth Elemental. I remember like you used Earth Elemental in season 1 to like tank Prideful for your tank. Like that's other Shaman specs can do that, but you could play like Primal Ellie, so it was like actually good. I don't know. I can't really think of another like weird DPS spec that isn't played that often that has like unique utility.
But there's always like niche stuff as well that is like that's how it's niche, right? Is like you wouldn't expect this interaction between some conduit and some boss in some dungeon, right? So yeah, I mean the discovery of those and sharing that information. I feel like a lot of it is like is there a high level streamer of this spec that I can watch do these dungeons as well, right?
That is literally most of it probably.
Yeah.
I think just circling back a little bit though, like the most important thing you can do is like if you are doing keys and LFG and stuff like that, making sure that like in season 1, I'm sure this was terrible during Prideful. If people thought that you were going to be playing like a Pride a certain way and like you were going to be cooldowning it a certain way and you just weren't, like that's really obnoxious. And so like making sure that people like especially if they don't like run into your class often, if they know what your class can and can't do, like that is important. Like, are you going to be the person that's DPSing the Pride a lot, or are you going to be the person that's doing damage to the pack that's like right after the Pride? So like for Fire Mages always should be combusting the Pride, and like if they weren't, then they were doing something wrong. But
Fire Mage Pride combustions was some of my favorite arguments I ever had with any players ever.
Anyway, but like that's the point.
Time.
Like it's just like who is going to be cooldowning this, and it's like, oh, okay, so if you have your wings up for the Pride as like a Ret Paladin, or if you have like your Convoke up for the Pride as a Feral, should you be committing it there? Like, what is your strength? Like, is that really where your power in the key comes from? That kind of thing.
All right, we have a topic now to discuss about key rerolling, but first we have our tip of the week section, which is very exciting. Of course, Hippo, you don't have to have one, but Tettles and I do. Mine, though, I've sourced from Twitter, from Stuart, who says, "Hey, Dratnos, I've got a tip of the week on how to get Cosmic Flux super easily on alts. Each 2s and 3s first win of the day gives like 300 Cosmic Flux, so you can get, almost 1,000 a day, right, from just doing those. If you can, obviously you have to win and get a group for them, but pretty quick. Yeah, so... I do not do that. That's not how I get my Cosmic Flux, but if that doesn't sound awful to you, that's a lot of Cosmic Flux.
How is Torghast for Cosmic Flux?
Very bad. Torghast is hot garbage.
You get like 70 for a layer at the max level or something. It's something awful.
Yeah, it's 100 for the layer 16s, but those are really hard, and it's like 70 for the layer 12s.
Challenging content that you're not trying to do for 100 Flux.
You get 75 for killing a rare in Zereth Mortis. That is the solution.
Yeah.
You fly around Zereth Mortis and you kill rares, and you do that for a couple days.
Cosmic Flux is like surprisingly hard to get. Like I started leveling my monk or like gearing it like last week. And I'm just like at a point where I could craft 4 set and I have like 291 legendaries. I just don't have Flux, man. Like, how do you get this? Like, I've been doing so many keys. I even like have done arena for like a badge.
And it's fly around Zereth Mortis and you kill rares.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, it's very... Because they made Soul Ash and Soul Cinder super easy to get, but they didn't do anything about Flux, which is weird. Because this was like the patch of quality of life.
They need to. Your ribs in our chat. The Brawl, apparently a good source of Flux as well.
Ooh,
Brawl.
Didn't know about that one.
Tried to queue for a Brawl. I sat in it for 20 minutes and then I just gave up because I don't want to sit in 20 minutes for a Brawl.
Oh, but that doesn't sound.
LFR as well is supposed to be pretty good.
Yeah, the raid is really good. You get like 4K for doing a full clear of the raid. because every mini boss you kill, every boss you kill is like 100, I think. So there's a lot that you can get from the raid.
All right, Tettles, let's take a look at your clip of the
Hippo
week.
had it. I think Hippo had it too.
Okay, Hippo's got a tip. All right.
Yeah, I could do. Okay, so cross faction is in, and if you wanted to play Feral Druid, you should play Night Elf, because there's a thing that you can do that's very broken. It's like 150 DPS over every other Druid race that Feral Druid can play. So Stealth Rake is like Feral Druid's like most damaging ability. Like it's your highest damaging ability besides like Bite, but that's a finisher. But in combat, you can Shadow Meld and Rake and get a Stealth Rake in the middle of combat on a 2-minute cooldown. It's very useful, and it lines up with your Tiger's Fury. It's very good stuff, and it made me so happy this week. I actually transferred before this reset, even though my GM told me not to.
Much to the chagrin of him.
Yeah. Because I was like, no, dude, it's been on the PTR for like a week. People have tested it. It'll work. And then it actually ended up working. So if it didn't work out, it would have been pretty bad.
Well, it bugged in like 50 different ways, but luckily not in a way that punished what you did.
Yeah, I know if you like queued arenas cross-faction, you just like couldn't see each other or something. I don't know, something weird. But yeah, if you wanted to play Feral Druid, Night Elf is the best race by a mile because Shadow Meld Rake is broken. Also works for stuff that rogues have, like Garrote for stealth. But if you play rogue, you're like a loser, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I remember Shadow Meld Garrote did like half of the stealth benefits in BFA, and then the other half it randomly didn't. It was really annoying.
Yeah,
I saw a clip recently with not Dratnos in it.
Ooh, not Dratnos? Back in the BFA days? Season 1 BFA?
It was an algorithm.
Okay, yeah. That's vintage clips. That's right when I started streaming. All right, let's take a look at your clip of the week here, Tuttles. What are we watching here?
We're watching the Jailer. So as a lot of different weird stuff has been bugged on the Jailer, over time with 9.2.5, some really funky stuff apparently is occurring again. This got fixed. This mace was bugged during early prog on this boss, and it eventually got fixed. But now it's
my god! I've never seen this clip. What the?
I've had this happen to me before. Yeah.
Dude, that's like literally if raid bosses were like controlled by a player, that's what you'd see. Like it literally snapped to Gingy at the last second.
Yeah, it's 360 no scopes. So it's like he's turning to the middle of the room to go walk to the middle of the room, but he hasn't fired off his lance yet, and so he slams
That's incredible.
it. Yeah. That's a banger clip.
Funny. It kills everyone in melee because the insta kill too. That's so
amazing. Love that. Okay, so I guess be careful if you're pushing. I mean, that's just because Jailer pushed during the cast there, so I guess that can bug. Very cool.
Checks out.
All right, main topic part 2. Slightly different direction here, but I think a pretty interesting one, which is about the key re-rolling system. So we have this. There was sort of a short post by Megaset, who I think is rank 1 M+ Mistweaver, if I'm not mistaken, or at least was last I checked. Yeah. And then she ended up making a follow-up post about it as well. And it was a full, long post. Tettles, do you want to, I guess, summarize what's in this? And I guess, it'll be linked in the description and stuff, maybe even in chat.
I think this post, this post went actually a decent number of directions. So I think the initial point of this post was talking about the 0.1% Mythic Plus title. And it was talking about, like, failing keys, basically depletion of keys, and like gaining score from that. And a question that was posed is like, should you be gaining score at all whenever you deplete a key, or like how much score should you be gaining whenever you deplete a key? And I think that the point that Meg was making is that people are getting way too much whenever a key is necessarily depleted. That was like the first part of it, and then it started to talk about like what are the ways of alleviating this without impacting the rest of the player base, like talking about like keystone depletion, talking about key re-rolling, that kind of thing. And there was a few different ways that were like the re-rolling of keys was posed. Do you think that's a pretty good synopsis of the whole thing? I'm trying.
Yeah,
there was a bit that I missed.
No, I think that's a good summary. Yeah, so it kind of breaks into 2 parts. The first part is like the thesis that people's score being comprised largely of depleted keys, and particularly that people getting the Cryptic Hero titles score being comprised largely of depleted keys is bad, which I do think I agree with. I think that
Yeah,
that's
I agree with that as well.
like
That's,
I think that there should be a pretty thick line that being zero point 0.1 seconds slower than the keystone versus zero point 0.1 seconds faster should be like you should be really happy in one case and really sad in the other case.
Is that common though? Because I feel like more often than not, like whenever you're looking at people who are getting this title, like something like 70 to 80% of their keys are going to be in time, aren't they? Very infrequently are you getting, because like more often than not, you're gonna have to do like 2 to 3 keystone levels higher than what your timed key is, I think, to be able to gain score.
So like the front page is all in time, but the cutoff right now is like 35 or 36, 35.50 I think it is. So as we start getting further down, you're starting to see there's somebody with two depletes, and
well, I mean, it's the argument of like, should a barely depleted key actually give you that much score? Like it's depleted. Like I don't, because it's the Blizzard system. The Raider IO system, when that was like implemented, or like the Blizzard system was implemented and depletes became useful. Like the Raider IO system was, if you depleted a key, even if it was barely, you got like way less score. Like even if it was 1 second under. This is like a Blizzard specific system thing. Because I remember in like season 1 Shadowlands, if you depleted a key, it was like barely, like it was worse than a key level below timed, and it just like looked really weird because it would still show as like, oh, you have a 28 depleted, but your 27 is better. I don't know, but like that's not the case anymore at all. If you barely deplete a key, you basically get like almost the exact amount of score, don't you?
It's like 1.5. It's like 1.5 higher or lower rather. Keystone levels lower, which I mean is a considerable amount, but it's more my point of like if you're able to even do a key 2 keystone levels higher out of time, that's close enough to where you're not completely shitting on the timer to where you're losing like all of your points. If you're able to even complete it, I feel like more often than not you're able to do it at 1 keystone level higher than where you previously were anyways. And like whenever Dratnus was scrolling through, not many people had
that was near the top, right? Here's where we're getting a little bit closer to the actual cutoff, and there are like most pages now are starting to have people with like 5 depletos.
Also, how does that
their
factor
score?
in Tyrant and Fortified? Like obviously,
this is just their best one, and so you're right. This actually is going to bias towards showing more completes than depletes because the Tyrant, the like if somebody's 1 and 1, it's much more likely they're getting more score from like from the other one, right? From the one that they have in time.
Click on one of the random
like so. Okay, yeah. Like here's somebody with 3 depletes as their best score, and let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Exposing this poor warlock.
Yeah. Wait, no. The bold is just the ones that are. The star is in time, right? And the bold is best score. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 depletes of their.
That's pretty bad.
20?
I don't think that guy should be getting a title if 6 of his keys are.
I don't know about not getting a title.
I think it's fine as is right now as well. Like, I mean, it's like Tettle said, it is, especially with the way that the current scoring system works. Like, it's a perfectly valid play style, right? Like, it's a perfectly valid thing to do. But I do think that changing it would make some sense. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I haven't been pushing keys this season very much, but I do think that there should be like a pretty big, like I think that timing versus depleting should be a big thing for your score. Like I think you should be really happy when you time something, and I think when you deplete something, it should be, oh, I have to come back here. Like I didn't get what I wanted out of this dungeon, rather than like, oh, I'm fine, I'm missing 7 points, which is what happens right now.
But then, like, the point that Meg was making in the post is, like, coming back to that key is really obnoxious right now, and it can be super punitive towards, like, obviously for people who are doing keys 10 hours a day, it's more or less fine because you're gonna roll back into that key later. You'll be able to have another crack at it. But somebody who's doing keys on a more casual level, you may only get that key during like a good week. You may only see that key once, and like that's tough. Like especially if the depletes aren't giving points.
Yeah. God, that's the story of my life. I couldn't get a Sanguine Depths Season 1 Shadowlands ever. Because you would deplete Sanguine Depths so often, because it was just a hard key, and then like no one would want to do it, and you also would have to get the Sanguine Depths. So, I don't know. I think her main point was like the even if you deplete a key, it should stay the same level.
Yeah, so she has a couple of different proposed solutions. The first of which is if the key remains incomplete, it does not lose a level, and you can just start again.
We have this in Legion.
Yeah,
well,
okay,
we didn't have this exactly in Legion. In Legion, it became depleted and it lost its rewards.
So
but
I
she's
to
not
point
proposing
that
that.
out.
Yeah,
It's really weird. Both of you did keys in Legion. You might remember this. Before like Raider IO existed, people would just do the highest key and complete it no matter what.
Yes.
It was WoW prog score, and you would see people like completing upper Karas in 7 hours because that's what people cared about back then. It was just like how high could you complete the key,
right.
And it didn't matter if you depleted it because you could just like go again if you really wanted to if something messed up really bad. But you would just end up staying in the key for like 7 hours to do it, which was really bad. And then after the first MDI, Raider IO became a thing, and it was like, okay, well, keys in time are all that matter, and depletes didn't even like no one cared about depletes. And then I'm pretty sure it like kind of just stayed that way forever throughout BFA. Like depletes were just significantly worse than keys.
I had
time.
one. Like I remember I had like one depleted key on my score.
Yeah,
because it was like a King's Rest 24 deplete that was easier than a King's Rest 22 for me. Like not easier, but like I just didn't get the King's Rest 22. But yeah, it was.
So it's really strange how it ended up here, where depletes are like fine as long as it wasn't that depleted. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think her first point is, I think it would make the game a lot more fun for like high key pushing. Because like it was like, oh,
I mean, that's basically how it works on the Great Push, right?
Yeah, I mean that's how it works in the Great Push. It's literally like, oh, we messed up here, just go again. It's how it works in like the Proving Grounds of Great Push, and like I guess the main event too. But you're like kind of timed, so you don't really want to slam your head against a key.
Philosophically, should it be like that? Like, do you? I don't even know if I necessarily want to see like world first groups being able to push like.
I don't know. It's
the absolute highest key. I feel like that's going to cause a lot of burnout, and groups that aren't like that number one group. I feel like it's going to de-incentivize them playing like at all.
I also feel
in a weird way.
It's so weird because I feel like it would be fun because like doing the 26 in time, like just for an example. You mess it up, you should go again. It would be like less stressful. You could have like more carefree, but it would be like less serious. The thing that I really enjoyed when I did High Mythic Plus was like the risk factor. It was like if you messed up, like you messed up, and the key is over, and everyone's pissed, and it's like kind of bad vibes. But like your position of the key matters a lot because if you make a mistake, like that's it. But right now it's like, oh, you make a mistake, just release, walk back, it'll be okay. 2 minutes over, like who cares? It's the same score, man. Like who cares? I don't like that, but I feel like doing a key over and over, it wouldn't be good for like the top end because people would just like lose their minds doing like 32 gambits over and over again until they got like enough Dance of Chi procs where they did the key in time. But I feel like I don't know. You can maybe have like a charge system, like you deplete a key, you get 2 more chances at this key level, and then it depletes or something like that. Like maybe
it's
something
notably
like that.
good. It's notably good for like pugs, though. Like if this,
yeah,
if that's
I mean that was one
pugs,
of our biggest points of like the first option is like because people leaving your key is like wow, that literally happened to me today. I was doing a 15 on my monk, a Sanguine Depths. Third boss, we pull it. The paladin tank dies. He just logs off. Like I just have a 14 now. Like I don't want to do.
You can't get somebody to run a 14. Like who's gonna run a 14?
That's the annoying part. Like who's trying to do a 14 Sanguine Depths? I don't want to do that. Like I'm just stuck with this 14 for the rest of the time. It's just like I don't know. I think there's definitely a middle ground or something. I think she also talked about how like maybe past a certain keystone level, it wouldn't deplete. Like say 15s wouldn't deplete because that's not the highest key. That's just a weekly reward. It's like something that a lot of players do. But like when you started getting up there, like doing like 25s to like 26s, it's like, well, these should deplete because like doing the same key over and over again on like a super high key, like this is such a niche amount of players that actually do the content at this high level. And I don't think Blizzard should cater towards that necessarily, I guess is my point.
I also think it's bad for the game, and it's also terrible for the Great Push too. Like it's ironically really bad for TGP.
It's like the Great Push is just retail now, which is like weird. If that would be the case, like if keys didn't deplete ever, like
if they never went down. I'm down for a floor. Like I'm down for some floors at 15, maybe 10 and 5, where it's like your key doesn't actually go below these. but you can obviously go lower at Norbos if you want, but like it doesn't actually
Yeah.
drop below. I think the 15 floor for pugs would be really nice.
Yeah.
For that. Although even there, I worry that go out, go again. This key doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
Is like there's some danger there because the way that Great Push is played, right? Like you go into the dungeon, you blast a massive first pull. If it doesn't work, you zone out and you try it again. Like that play pattern being one that is allowed is, I think, something that I'd be very wary about introducing to live. So for that reason, I don't like this solution. But she has 3 other proposals. The second of which is make the title requirement specifically state keys are to be timed to be counted towards the title. Your score could stay whatever it is with whatever depletes, but the title is looking at your, I guess, undepleted score, which is a solution that would lack some elegance in terms of how it would be displayed, I'm sure. But maybe Radar.io could have come up with a good way to show it cleanly. In general, I think I would sort of be okay with it if it wouldn't. The main problem is I think it would be awkward for people to like know where they stand score wise. But if there was a good UI way for this, I think I could be down for solving it that way. Or the other solution here, make it so keys over a certain level don't give score if depleted or give half score. So a depleted 20 would give close to a timed 20, which is nice for people getting Keystone Hero for their conduits or whatever.
Yeah.
But a depleted 25 gives half or no score because that's where you're aiming for the title or rating for prestige. And so that should be where we start to say, hey, you actually like the timing is what you're going for here. And then final one is make it so depleted keys are worth 2 to 3 key levels lower rather than 1 key level, which I think is a less harsh version of the half score thing.
Yeah.
But this would have to be in addition to another change because the same problem could exist as does currently. I think this would solve most of it. I think that this would...
I really like number 4.
Yeah.
It's just like what it was with the Radar.io system
Exactly.
before Blizzard, and it worked. I don't think anyone had complaints because like being the person that has a depleted key showing up on like your history is like that doesn't feel good. Like I don't know. I definitely think that they should be worth 2 or 3 keys lower rather than 1 key lower. That like it makes a lot of sense to me, just because that's how it has been forever until the Blizzard system. And
I will say though,
but I don't know.
It being as generous as it is quite nice for getting KSM.
Yeah,
That's true.
That's like the big thing as well. It's like the quality of life of like being able to deplete a 20 and not have to bother with it and still being able to get 3k is like very nice.
Yeah. So that's why I'm just like, is this even really a problem? Because like getting all of the 20s for my conduits, it was nice to have some depletes on there. Getting all of the 15s for the Valor, it's nice to have some depletes there and some leeway, especially since a lot of those are pugged. But like then at some point, like if you're in a competitive group, I understand like why going for the title it would be a little bit weird. But at the same point, I'm like, is this something that really fundamentally needs to change on a system as a whole?
I think that especially like a nice thing it does in pugs as well is it reduces the let's leave as soon as it's clear this key is depleted pattern that is a toxic one. But I do think that it's a problem worth considering for high keys. It's possible that changing it at all is not worth the downsides, but I think something like a hybrid of her 3rd and 4th proposals of 2 to 3 key levels lower, maybe something that gets kicked in on like a prorated basis between key level 20 and 25, such that depleted 20s are worth basically the same as timed 20s, but by the time you get up to 25, now it's 3 key levels lower rather than 1. Could be a way to do it pretty smoothly, such that it will affect basically nobody who's pugging except for people that are trying to pug competitively, and the high key pushers. Again, I don't know how many high key pushers do feel that there's too many depletes on people's leaderboards right now and on their own leaderboards, but if that's a common feeling, I think that would be a change that would probably make the game better. Is it necessarily worth the time of implementing it? Yeah, maybe not. I don't know.
At that point, you're just like arguing over nothing.
Definitely feels like that.
I feel like is very low because I think the system they have now benefits the player base like positively more than it affects them negatively. It's like it's like a 0.1% title, right? Like that. Like we're arguing about a 0.1% title. It's like it feels kind of weird. Like has there ever been like a PvP argument about this? I feel like PvP is more streamlined with how you get titles though. So I don't know.
The PvPers, they always have something they're complaining about for sure. Yeah.
But I don't know. I think that personally, I really don't like that depletes are like fine to have. And I feel like the fun of Mythic Plus is the timed aspect, even if like a lot of people dislike that. So I know a lot of people dislike how like Mythic Plus is timed. They just want to like be able to do the key at their own pace or whatever. But like to a lot of people, it's the opposite. It's like, oh, this key like not in time. Like I don't even want to do it because like the fun is like for like I remember like season 1 Shadowlands. Like I had so many keys that were like 30 seconds until deplete, and you do it, and like that feels really good. But like right now, you're just like, oh, we depleted by 1 minute. It's practically the same as an on time. Good job, everyone. High fives. But like you don't. I feel like you don't feel good about that. I don't know. Might just be me.
You're getting
I'm
handed a
never happy to actually
participation
deplete a
trophy,
key
right?
regardless.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. It's an interesting discussion for sure, but I think the score system is so overwhelmingly good.
Yeah, it definitely has way more positives than negatives.
I will also say I missed the exponential scaling of score with key level as well.
Yeah,
where
like the higher the key goes, the more score it gave, and like
Yeah.
later you would be like 7K IO. It was really cool.
Yeah.
You had a flashy color on like the in-game UI.
and in the
After having seen it
USHM
for a
Plus
little bit.
Discord.
Yeah, oh, dude, yeah.
Oh, that was the real reason. to
Those
push,
were like
actually.
the peak times. You literally, dude, you didn't push keys for fun. You pushed keys so your name would appear higher in like the Mythic Plus Discord.
Yeah.
I only have to break that 100 score
Yeah.
break point to get a new color, and then
Literally.
be higher on the
Colors are
sidebar.
so good.
Neuron
okay.
activation.
I have a question. How do you guys like alt score? So we've seen it for a little bit, like main score, alt score with Tyran Fort. Are you guys okay with that still? Because I remember whenever the score system was first pitched, people were a little bit like, "Oh, this is obnoxious. I don't have to play both weeks." Blah blah blah.
Wait, so what do you mean? Do you mean for
Like,
alt
the
characters, or-
Tyran fortified score thing.
Oh, like
yeah.
the split?
Yeah.
I think
Score,
it's
alt score,
I think it's
yeah.
good because like Mythic Plusers that want to play, they're like ravenous, dude. Like they want to play 17 hours a day. They fucking love keys so much. And like season 1 Shadowlands, convincing your bear to log on to do a Halls of Atonement Tyrannical, impossible. It's not like you want to go into a the other side Tyrannical. No, dude, your healer is not logging on, bro. He's playing GeoGuessr. Like it's just.
I wonder who your healer was in season 1.
Not possible. You get sent to Blood DK prison 3 keys lower level than you'd want to be doing, and it was just like I mean it's kind of unfun. But now you're like forced to play on Tyrannical, and I think it's really good because at the start of this expansion, I remember the only people that consistently pushed on Tyrannical weeks were like the Chinese groups, and everyone was like, "What are these guys doing? They're like not even doing the highest keys. They were doing like 1 key level lower." But it makes you like way better at the game, in my opinion. Like fighting a Sanguine Depths Tyrannical, like second, third boss, and even the first boss, you have to play your class, man. Like you can't just like sit there and be unless you're a warlock, I guess. But you have to like actually cycle your defensives. Like you need to like know how to do your single target rotation instead of just mass AoEing. Like I think it's really good for like individual player skill to like see who's like actually really good, be able to do high Tyrannical keys. But I think that's a very niche group of people that it would affect. That Tyrannical is like way worse than Fortified. I don't think it ever matters like even past like 20. It's probably like similar difficulty. It's just like when they start getting really high, like the 29s, 30s people are doing now. I don't even is Tyrannical still like harder than Fortified? I haven't looked in a while. If people,
I think most people's score mostly comes from fortified, but
Yeah.
yeah. I guess I have some examples right now that I'm looking at on another monitor. Let me see.
Score mostly comes from fortified, but it seems like the Tyran weeks are able to be competitive, especially on some affix sets. I think that there's
Yeah.
like there's a couple really free fortified weeks is like one of the biggest things. Is like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
so you're gonna be able to do that.
It does look like most people score primarily their better week is fortified, but they have 1 to 3 Tyran dungeons, something like that.
yeah, I think that's cool. I remember back to the great push when they like split affixes to Tyrannical and Fortified, and no one had done Tyrannical keys because there wasn't a reason to. It was like terrifying, bro. Like you want me to do a 27 necrotic Tyrannical Plaguefall? Like that doesn't sound possible. But then like you do it and it like isn't actually as hard as you thought it was because the trash of the dungeon just like falls over and you can just be I don't know. The problem with Tyrannical is always just you don't want to fight a boss for 7 minutes and you don't want to get one shot. But I think this expansion in particular, there isn't that many bosses that are just like, wow, this guy on Tyrannical is just not fun at all. Like the only thing that comes to mind is like last boss of Necrotic Wake, last boss of Plaguefall, every single Spires of Ascension boss, to be honest. Devos in particular, last boss.
Oh god, Devos' health bar, man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know.
The guy. Like I had a lot of HP. You guys remember that Korean group that was on Devos for 12 hours?
Yeah, that was one pull as well. Just one full pull. They were doing good damage too. Just big health bar. Yeah.
I miss when Devos you could do the achievement spear in the middle of the intermission and just
Okay, that was
like
sick.
that was dude. It was actually really interesting.
4% per spear. Yeah.
Yeah, you could do like a bunch of her HP in the intermission, and like it was like a normal paced boss fight, but instead you're fighting Devos for 7 minutes on Tyrannical on like a super high key. So that's kind of unfortunate. Yeah, dude, when you asked this question, I thought you were talking about like alt characters.
Yeah, alt score.
Oh
Dude,
no.
I got a bone to pick with that. I hate it so much that it's not account wide. Like
That's
if I'm 3K on my main, at least give me KSM privileges on my alt, man. Like it's so annoying. Like I'm like gearing up my monk. I'm just like, oh, I can't upgrade this piece to 272 because I haven't played a Tyrannical week ever because I've been playing it for 1 week. It's like stuff like that's super annoying, but
yeah, alt score is fine, but the fact that it's required for stuff is not.
Yeah.
100% agree.
I was talking about like alternative score, like
the alt run stuff. Yeah, it's good. I think I like that people have to play Tyrannical now.
I do want to quickly go back to something in chat because I saw somebody saying something about how is it really a problem? Like less skilled player are people who deplete 26s less skilled than people who time 25s? And I don't think that's what this argument is about. I think it's much more about like when you yourself are doing a key, like is it a better experience if it matters whether you time the key or not, right? And like that, it's not about like, oh, these people don't deserve key. It's not that at all because like Tettles was saying, you know, most of the people on the board have pretty similar ratios of depletes and completes to everybody else. Obviously, there's a couple of random outliers on both sides, but I suspect that's mostly just RNG rather than like, oh, bad players have a lot of depletes or anything like that. But I think it is just a case of like, are the incentives in such a way that we're not getting as rewarding an experience as we may have before?
And people were saying some weird shit like this only affects 0.1% of the player base, but I think that we were as a whole just talking about how to tackle like the key re-rolling system, and we weren't necessarily focusing on like the 0.1% rewards because like there's a decent number of ways that the key re-rolling system just by itself
I think the floor at 15 is the kind of thing that would help the pug experience a lot. Like if the key doesn't go down at 15 to 14, then that would be really big.
But you also still want to make you still want to incentivize people timing keys in some way, and so there has to be a balance there. And I think that's like the point we were getting on, not like, oh, this is only an issue for the title. I don't even think we were really even talking about the title cutoff or anything like almost at all. I don't even think we mentioned it.
Yeah. All right.
I think I mentioned it once because like we were looking at a warlock with like 7 depletes, and I was like, "Why does this guy get a title?" But
yeah, I mean, I think it's like
1 key lower, he would be like the same score.
Exactly.
You just wouldn't have depletes, and you could easily do that if you're like 2 minutes over.
If you're able to time it to where it's your top key, more often than not, if you're able to time it to where it's still your top key, or do it out of time to where it's still your top key, you're more often than not able to do it 1 key lower.
I mean, of course you're able to,
100%.
right? But like it's like getting the score should be about doing what you're able to do, not just being able to do it, right?
Yeah,
but getting the key is also like really arduous a lot of the time.
Although, you know, with the way that you can reroll keys end a dungeon and hunt things down.
Being 8 dungeons, it also helps, but people hate 8 dungeons.
Yeah. There's silver linings or grass is always greener type situation, regardless of how many dungeons there are, right?
Yeah.
All right. We have a couple of Q&A questions to get to, but first we get to thank our supporters over on the Patreon. They are Paul, who gave Solia Zumi shoes. You guys see the Solia bug? I had that earlier this week.
I heard that it was like running around during
after she teleported in the second time in P2, like, so she starts P2, right? And then sometime later she teleports to the middle again. After that, she was just pathing randomly all over the room, not chasing a tank. And just doing her abilities still whenever they came off cooldown, but just full speed zooming all around the room.
Weird.
Great bug. Fixed now. If a Kyrian prop paladin and a survival hunter end up in the same group, does that make it Team America? Which we learned, Tettles, you and I, that this is because the aspect of the eagle, you throw eagles apparently when you're doing Raptor Strike. So
didn't know.
Wait, do you actually?
Yeah, there you go. See, a lot of us learning new things. Dranos' Dino Pillow, Chromed, Trekkie, Never Nude, Chewy. Shout out to this upcoming Moses and M Plus ally with Horde, June 4th, 11 Pacific. ZivXX, Salty Senny, Necris, Sinmora, Tank Dilt, Nevuk, Red Ceratops, Eevee, Survival Main, No Trick, I Forgot I Was Sub-Tier, Diemat, Lufer, Rework Mistweaver, Van Heelen, sponsor of the podcast, purveyor of dad jokes, eater of bacon, first of his name, Nix, Delete Gaming, Gallic, Brusif, Dratner Shots Abyss, Woe Killers Be Gone, Wait, Hippo, I've heard you. Can you do a? Is there any availability here? No. Okay. All right.
No, none of that. I'm not screaming, man.
Okay. Just checking to see if one was charged up. M Sanity, Xena, Rogue is now good enough for Prague, but still bad enough to be sat for SLG. Bless up. Red Color, YouTube.com/Workbringer, Alphabet Soup, Druid Friends of Evolved Gaming, #1 Simsky for Trelsky. Lurka got his golden rabbit out of mists. Now he won't stop talking about being a magician. Remind him that mages don't cast chain lightning. I got flamed for not interrupting in Arathi Basin Comp Stomp. Milk. Vanille, aka YOLO Swag Crew. Sife, Pone, Windwalker Monksteel with nerfs by rolling with the punches. That's a very outdated one now.
Yeah, that is very outdated.
Duda Sims with 4-piece. Skelly will be going back to Elemental from Enhance. Dosegni making more Vamp Kids than Twilight. And give Trell the first mount. Thanks all for the support. All right.
Some unique names.
Yeah, we got some bangers in there for sure. First off, before we get to Q&A, we have a news piece, which is, I guess, what's going on here? Alt Catch-Up M Plus and PvP boxes for Valor and Conquest have been added in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, that's cool.
So if you have 1875 M Plus rating or 1440 PvP rating, you can buy what eye level is even in these BOA things.
No idea, but you can send it over. It's BOA.
Is it items or is it not just currency?
It's items, I think. I don't think you're sending Valor over. Yeah.
Huh.
Usually M0 eye level people are saying. Okay,
yeah.
random M0 items, so 236 items that you can send to your alts.
Does
Not
it
the
ever,
greatest rate.
Does it ever upgrade or is
it's upgrade 1 out of 12, yeah. So you could upgrade it
so
with
you can
Valor.
upgrade it. That's
But
weird. Okay.
You'd have to mail it and then upgrade it with the alts Valor, which would be giga costly.
Yeah, I think it would
But
be
still,
better if you could mail Valor across. Maybe
if you have like a main that's got 10,000 Valor and doesn't need it
it's
anymore,
useful.
I could see using this to jumpstart a very fresh alt, but still pretty niche.
Maybe you roll some trinkets for it. It'd be good.
If you're not like a fresh character too, it's like
it's definitely very useful.
Yeah. I think the trinket rolling, again, you need to have a big surplus of Valor on at least one character for that to be worth. All right, next question for you.
Oh, wait, hold on.
Oh.
Apparently you can get your 4 set without stepping foot into anything as well.
Oh.
Well, yeah, because you could catalyze the pieces that drop. Yeah, so, I mean, you already can
That's nice.
kind of do that with, if you farm some Sandworm relics. Sandworm
Dude,
relics.
you're not farming. You're not farming.
I have
Sandworm relics.
I catalyzed a piece of Sandworm relic here today, Tettles. Please have some respect.
But you're not doing for 4 pieces. That is actually so many Sandworm relics, man.
Okay, good point.
That's like 900 or something.
I did it, and I was like, "This is how the game is intended to be played. I'm doing my part. This is what it's here for." All right, our next question is for you, Hippo, from Freducia, who says,
Okay.
"What's one thing about feral druids people always had the wrong impression about, and Hippo-san would really like to clarify and correct?"
Okay. Definitely that it's hard. It has not been hard in a long time. I'm not exactly sure what people find difficult about it. I think it's dot management mostly, but you have the same amount of dots as like a Moonkin pretty much. Like you have 3, I guess, but one of them is like completely passive because of a talent you play. It's right now at least. I struggle with specs that aren't fair. Like, dude, I remember in BFA last patch. This is gonna surprise people, but I have never thought that Feral was that hard after like Legion. Pretty much, like halfway through Legion, they made Feral Druid do more direct damage, and like since then, it's just another melee spec. It's just a Fury Warrior, but you're a cat instead of a warrior, pretty much. Yeah, I don't know. I guess it's just that it's hard. It's not hard, and if you want to play it, you should play it because it's fun and you have +3 range. And there's also like, and you're a cat, yeah. There's like a boom. It's called owl weaving, but I call it boomboxing. A lot of people look at the spec and they see that like the #1 parses are doing that. It's like not stat required, and it doesn't matter. It's literally just when you're low energy, you go into Moonkin form and you press Sunfire, and for some reason that pushes a lot of people away. But 99% of people don't even do it. I don't even do it sometimes. I do it most of the time just because it's funny. Because like you're not doing anything, you're just auto attacking. Otherwise, you don't have to boombox, and it's an easy spec, so you should play it because the more people that play it, the more chances it's gonna get buffed. So you should definitely play it.
What do you mean? A lot of people play Moonkin and they're not getting buffed, you know?
Yeah, but they don't deserve
because
it.
Because too many of them are playing it, maybe.
Yeah. I don't think we're ever gonna get Pharaoh Druid to 30,000 mythic parses, but we can maybe get it up there.
We'll be back next expansion. It's fun.
Yeah.
True. Almost certainly true. All right. Next question comes from Tylenus, who says, "What are your thoughts on the current philosophy of gearing, specifically how long it takes? Should we be spending an entire patch trying to acquire BIS gear, or should we be able to gear a character in a couple of months and have the rest of the patch playing with BIS gear? Not a mythic raider, just M+," the person adds as well. Tettles, you want to take a first reacto?
God, it's so tough because like philosophically it's an MMORPG and like a large part of the game is grinding the gear, right? Like that's a large part of like why people play. And
they're definitely like
people
a lot of us that would quit once we have BIS gear rather than play with BIS gear, right?
But I don't think there's anything. Personally, I don't think there's anything philosophically wrong with that, and I think that like the repeatable content should be done like at some point with BIS gear, and like Blizzard's job isn't necessarily to continue to run on a hamster wheel. Their job is to make the content like fun to repeatably play, and I think that they're actually going in that direction, which I do think is better. So more determined. I don't think that it. So then it's going to be a question of like how long should it take to be able to get BIS gear, but I do think that like at least having a path to getting it is better than what we've had in the past, where like Titanforging didn't even offer you a path. You just felt like a hamster.
Hamster.
Running around, man, in my balls.
Yeah. I actually think gearing right now is pretty good after like the 13 quality of life changes they made.
Yeah.
Before that, it was probably the worst it's ever been, but yeah, I'll say that with confidence, even though it's probably not true. But like right now, it's pretty easy to gear a tune even if you like don't have people that are just going to carry you in 15s, which probably isn't going to happen. But you get eye level very easily. You get foresight very easily with like creation catalyst, like LFR giving you tier. Like a lot of the classes, just like all you need is tier and 2 legendaries. You can play them, and you can get that in like if you played the game like an unorthodox amount a week. But I don't think it's that hard to gear right now. But like the super BIS, like if you're like not mythic rating, it's probably kind of annoying. If you don't have a raid group, it's probably way worse. But
friend of the show, Corey, geared 2 characters in under 15 hours to 270 with foresight and stuff like that, and he wasn't getting like boosted through mythic or anything like that. He was just doing like, okay, so he got a little bit of help in Mythic Plus with some friends, but like 15 hours to get all of your foresight, get double legendary stuff like that. That's fast, but like I think that's pretty indicative. So I think that like if you're going really fast, you could even do it in 10 if you're getting boosted.
Yeah, I definitely think it's on like the not normal end though.
Yeah,
I think a week for a player that like primarily plays alone is probably like you could get 270 if you played a lot. But like a couple weeks, because like you need a tyrannical week and a fortified week to start upgrading gear. Valor's capped now. Conquest is uncapped. Dude, here's a tip of the day. The easiest way to target a tier piece with a creation catalyst is a PvP. You can just buy a piece with Conquest and go craft it into tier. It's good.
Yeah,
I think gearing's at a good spot, but it definitely wasn't earlier.
Yeah, I think as well, like getting up to 270, 272 upgraded M+ pieces is, I think that's good enough to be able to get to reliably. And then
for the record, that's like 15 hours of gameplay. That's not like 15 hours of doing it, which is like a little bit different.
Yeah, I think that the difference between like 272 and 278 is something that's fine to be getting slowly over time while you're playing the content over the months of like playing. And I do think, getting to 270s is fairly quick if you're... I mean, that's the thing, is like, are you a player who's able to get invited to 15s? Like, do you have friends that you can trick into carrying your idiot rats? That's a big variable
Yeah. That's
I
a
got my
massive
hunter.
Massively
variable.
changes how your gearing
Yeah.
experience is going to be.
My hunter got geared in like 15 hours, and all I did was like one heroic raid with my guild, and then like a couple of 15s, and that was like it was like
Right.
268.
But
Like,
so
okay, yeah,
so for a player with access to like none of that, it is a much longer
friction-
and more incremental,
yeah.
climb up a mountain. So, but friends OP, that's a good characteristic in an MMO, I think.
Yep.
All right, let's see here. Next one comes from Rodella in Discord, who says, with 9.2.5 coming, why are dwarfs preferred over Dark Iron Dwarf for tanks? Oh damn! I wish we had Trell here to go into the nuance of this, but do either of you happen to know because I think for tanks it's actually fine either way, right? It's like DPS that like dwarf for the crit damage, right?
Well, they want dwarf because like you get damage reduction whenever bleeds or curses or whatever get dispelled off of you, and so it's not the most useful thing. I think that like first and foremost, it doesn't matter. Like both of them.
Yeah, I mean, but in MDI we actually see a lot of Dark Iron tanks and then dwarf DPS. So I actually think, yeah, again, either is going to be totally fine for you. Because Dark Iron gives you 1% reduced physical dam taken. It's really good for tanks.
We see both in the MDI. We actually see both.
Yeah, but then for DPS, dwarf is OP because you have 2% crit damage. You have strike through 1, and that's a really good passive.
Just call it strike through 1.
Strike through 1, dude. That's
that's
what it
is.
is.
That is what it is.
Do not.
It's OP.
It was dwarf ratio before it was strike through, I think. So,
yeah, that's true. Yeah, because the Dark Iron racial, it's like a DPS racial and a cleanse at the same time, right? It like gives you.
Yeah, I think it's a 2-minute cooldown. It just gives you primary stat.
Yeah.
And if you cleanse something with it, it can cleanse curses and poisons and bleeds.
Curse, poison, magic, bleed, disease. It can do it all.
It's just
it can curse everything.
So can Stoneform, yeah.
If you cleanse a debuff, you get extra main stat. I don't know exactly how much it is, but I know that it is a significant amount that certain classes would want to play Dark Iron over normal dwarf, depending on like how much you like crit.
Yeah.
How much you like main stat.
The dwarf, like you said, when you hit Stoneform on regular dwarf, you get a 10% physical DR for 8 seconds as well. So that is something. But I think the Dark Iron side of it, like I think Dark Iron for tanks and dwarf for DPS is more of a, or like either for tanks and then generally dwarf for DPS.
I know when we played Alliance Great Push, the Windwalker and the Ellie Shaman played Dark Iron just because it was like a badge pretty much, and the classes already used badge. It was just 2 minutes instead of 1 minute, so it just boosted your damage a little bit more, and like the crit wasn't that important, especially because stats were a lot lower then.
Yeah, then the problem is like you use it for that or for the dispel, right? And it's like you might not have the dispel when you need it.
I think that's also like a good thing. Like you could use it, like say a dungeon doesn't put debuffs on you, you still have a useful ratio instead of just like a DR.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think I prefer Dark Iron most of the time, but Dwarf DR is kind of OP. If you're like a fire mage or something, you should play Dwarf because you crit all the time. But
makes sense.
All right, next question comes from Rydon in Discord, who says, I've watched this Mega Mythic Plus discussion. Feel like a massive fix would be M plus only talents like there are for PvP, right? Made every game feel fresh in PvP. Do you think they could implement M plus talents similar to PvP ones?
That would be really cool. I don't know what they would do, but that would be really cool.
You think it would be cool? Oh, God.
Yeah, dude, I think that would be sick. Like you get certain tier set, but like imagine, okay, so like you get a tier set bonus and a keystone or something that like you didn't have before. Like say when this expansion ends, like some classes current tier set, like they don't want to lose that. It feels so good to play with. Like I think Blood DK comes to mind, I guess. Like when Blood DK loses this tier set, they're gonna be so sad. But, like what if they had a Mythic Plus talent that gave them this tier sets effect? That'd be cool.
Yeah, I do think like if there were cool effects, getting cool effects is always cool.
Yeah, but they also could be turbo useless, and you're pissed. So,
yeah,
I don't know.
I also think
really
PvP
depends on the balancing of it.
Like it is a barrier to queuing up for PvP. Is like, oh, I have to look at my PvP talents and like learn what all these do and which ones I'm supposed to pick. And it makes your class play differently in one part of the game to another, which to some that keeps it fresh, but to others that's like you know, a weird thing when your character's just fundamentally doing different things in different parts of the game. I do
You
think
get raid talents, right? Like,
What if you did though, dude? Imagine when you zone into a raid as a Moonkin, you get Moonkin or like the PvP talent, dude. You get leader of the pack. How sick that'd be! You already got raid buff, dude. Raid buffs. Oh my god, this is it. This solves it. We've done it. We've solved it. The classes that have raid buffs just get nothing. That's their raid talent. and then all the classes that don't have raid buffs get something. Like, dude, that'd be sick.
Well, I might be on something here, yeah.
That's what I'm saying. That sounds good. Like,
I think
it's smoke bomb.
When we think about specs as well, like Outlaw, Windwalker, Outlaw really needed a lot of help in M+. Windwalker needed a lot of help in Raid. So, like, how could you... One way, if there was M+ only talents, I appreciate that one thing that would be really good for is, like, oh, let's buff some Outlaw M+ talents. Oh, let's buff Windwalker and nerf some of their M+ talents, right? And that way you can kind of, like, adjust how good they are in Raid and M+ separately from each other rather than having to kind of do them with the same wheel. But I still am kind of against the idea just to, like, for bloat reasons. And I do think I'd be very excited to look through all of them. If they announce the system, I'd be like, oh my god, this is so cool. I'm going to spend the next 10 hours thinking about this.
Yeah, I like that idea. So, I don't know.
All right, next question is for you again, Hippo. It's from Rib Eyes, who says,
"Oh my god!
Can you ask Hippo why he thinks Elemental Shaman is unplayable?"
I think Ele Shaman sucks because it does the same damage as Enhance and doesn't bring Wind Fury, and it's also played by Ribs in my raid, so it's just automatically worse than anything that can be played. So if you want to know this, Rib Eyes guy, he's a known enemy of me. He's in my guild. We're mortal enemies. I want nothing to do with him, and he just wants to play Ele Shaman. So that's my most hated spec now. Whatever he's playing, I don't like it. But yeah, that's my answer for that.
All right, it was a good one. Final question, I guess, before we go is where can people find you? Is there any, Twitter, Twitch, anything like that you want to shout out? Or
yeah, it's just Hippos Are Neat for Twitter and Twitch. Could like link it or something. One second.
Yeah, I'll put it in the description in the YouTube and podcast page and everything like that. But yeah, awesome. Well, thank you for coming on to the show, and that is going to be the end of this episode. We'll be back next week with another one. Bye, everybody. Good.